I'm going to try to steer away from the sensitivity of this topic by showing the broad contours of what I call the theater of ideas, largely from a lot of images. So we'll be moving through the teleprompter fairly swiftly, and I'll let you make your own connections on this subject. First of all, we have a tradition of looking at what other construction is going on in our industry. As I like to remind people, education is the largest non-residential construction market in the U.S. So this is a view of construction going on not too far from us here in Ann Arbor. We have different views, and we actually are able to see people working. There we go. Well, it's nice to see people working. It's what, 2 o'clock, 2:30 here in Eastern Standard Time. So all is well. Everything we do is to try to make this thing safe, cheap, simpler, lower cost, longer lasting. Those are our 4 canons, and so it's always interesting to see what's going on. We did check out Stanford, but it looks like they're all on lunch hour out there, so it's not just a Michigan webcam. We do like to see other webcams around the country. Well, we could do 2 presentations, one for why trade associations help our society and one for how easy it is for them to get into trouble. We've plenty of marquee cases in the media about how some of them have wandered off the charter of the 503C, or they've wandered off the charter of the expectations of their members. So I'm very sympathetic to the fine line. I felt it necessary to deal with this issue after we've the issue seems to repeat itself every week when we have our focus section. So at the moment, I'm only going to focus on the contributions they make to society, but I do promise a cinematic moment. In the regulatory world, cinematic moments are hard to come by. This one I'll put in the form of a question because I'd like you to make your own conclusions about it. So what I first I'd like to be able to do is to let you know about my colleagues. We have on the phone with us Andrew Green. We have my colleague here in the studio with me, Jack Janveja. You can learn a little bit more about them on our website. Let's launch into it here. The topic of trade associations in the U.S., because of their special status in the tax code, opens onto a minefield of sensitivities. And if our primary role is to write code and get votes, and that's the way I see it, and that's what's been effective for us, there really is no substitute for writing code and getting votes. It's how we get those ideas into the marketplace contemplated in the U.S. standard system, and that's the fundamental currency of what we do. That's the coin of the realm. In a way, ideas are our Bitcoin. But I have to tiptoe around the reasons for, as we march through this presentation, you may see where some of the pitfalls may be. And I like to think of these Friday sessions as ones where we have to, I can expand upon a bullet point, but very often I find even a bullet point is much more complicated. So one thing as our tradition, we like to run through the week's work, so let me get over here and tell you what we've done this week. It's a, let's get to my blog site, and so for the week, we had dealt, I'll go in reverse order. Today, we are moving this, we're helping the University of Texas move their healthcare administration standard along. We've been working on that since November or so, and we're helping them in several different ways. But at the moment, it's just to give it more visibility. They'll be looking for subject matter experts and some ideas. They're in the idea business also. We have yesterday we were dealing with the elevator code. It turns out that there is a public review comments on the existing elevator and escalator code. They're due on Sunday. We have some markups, so we'd like to, we're going to put some ideas in front of that committee. And let's see, ISO waste. That's right, there's a new standard that ISO is proposing, or at least the German government is proposing. Remember that we take an interest in international standards because governments tend to be inspired by other governments, and the government is an important stakeholder in standards development processes, so they will take inspiration from each other. And so that's why when we see that something that might affect large part of our campuses, we want to be attentive to that. So there's a teleconference scheduled for that one. Mold. I guess this is a big issue in the housing area, and there's a new standard for how to remediate it. So this is the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration, and they will be setting benchmarks and quality and standard of care in this new document. The new documents always get extra attention. We started the week out getting hammered by ASHRAE. We've got 19 proposals to changes for 1990.1. We started to work on them. Some of them are significant. So that's what a week looks like, and so we can return to what we try to do here, of course, is stand back, assess what we've done, see about the degree to which we're conforming to our plan, and also enlighten others in our industry about policy and some of the strategy here. So, but we have to get to drill down to some more specifics so they can completely understand. So let's get back to our Prezi now, and let's present it. As I said, I'm going to move through it very quickly. Of course, I don't know anybody in this industry that's not trying to save money. We're very self-conscious of the fact that that our industry seems to be, let's say we're on a complicated cost and price journey. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of reasons why it's that way. A lot of it has to do with its the network that it is, but some of the larger institutions do have a mission which is quite a bit different than some of the smaller institutions. Here is actually an old professor of mine at MIT. His name is Arthur Maddock. I put this up here because we are, one of our core missions is teaching, of course. I like to think that he was the professor that inspired Good Will Hunting, if you remember that movie. So this is his differential equations course. So obviously teaching is what is supposed to be our first responsibility. He taught 1803 over there. He's probably still teaching it. Here's a modern research university. We have large medical complexes. I believe that our billable, I think the larger part of our overall budget does come from our health system. And it's non-trivial, as you can see. You have a power plant over here. Where's our power plant? There's our power plant there. So there's quite a bit of square footage here, so to say. Overall, the University of Michigan, I believe, is about 38 million square feet. Of course, the Modern Research University, you have to have an athletic program. So it's not just a school. There's many other things that we have to do. So that's what makes it complicated. Of course, now I put this in here to remind everybody, this is one of the ancient research universities, what happened to them. This is the Agora in Greece. I believe it also was a gathering place, but this is where I believe I think Socrates and Plato did all their teaching and discourses and such. So I thought I'd put this in here to give some reference about what the fate of some of the early research universities, what that was. So as I like to say, we think that we can drive value, but it's very often not very dramatic. I believe that we can somehow, and those of us in Michigan are sensitive to this actually, that we can get from the Model T to the Corvette Stingray to the Lunar rover here. But it didn't happen because of big drama. We all agreed that we need 4 wheels. Okay, so we're going to standardize on 4 wheels, mostly. But there's other things we do. So hundreds and millions, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of little things along the way got us from here to here to here. And I believe that we need to continue that process. And you can see here is an outline of the city. I'm trying to get that across here. That we need to continually do that. And that's what I mean when I say that we're looking for 0.5% at a very high rate. Of course, we've been successful at it. We try to summarize this in one eye shot in our annual report. You can get to our annual report. Here's our website. Also, the blog site has a link to this. So in here is some more information about what we've been doing, trying to get the standards and the standards process to work with several trade associations. So I'm going to stay away from the sensitive areas. You can read about them here, and we'll get into the larger picture. Of course, in this idea marketplace, we have 3 what's called three opposing interests: producer, general interest, and user. User on one end, producer on the other. This is the balanced market that's contemplated in all the standards development organizations throughout the world. And you might think of this as, you want to buy a car, for example. This would be the car salesman, this would be you, and this here would be the bank and the insurance company. So this guy here, I often use the term incumbent interest in the standard space. These are the people whose business model depends upon being in the market. So I'll call them incumbent interests because, like UL and NFPA and others, they've been there forever, basically. The manufacturers, they're there all the time. We are not. Our hope is that we can control our costs in small amounts at a very high rate, working in this idea space. So you're going to see this, this idea of balance, producer, general interest, and user, all throughout, underlying almost everything that we do. But of course, in a large industry, and you will see how large we are, you're going to have divergent interests. Very often, in the same industry, an industry that's about 1.2 trillion, you're bound to have it broken up because there's many functions. It's an industry that really could stand by itself in many ways. Because of the different, its different elements, its characteristics. We of course want to get safety and economy to converge here, and it's not so easy. But as I like to say, it may not be easy, but it's worth it. That's what we do. It's we get paid to do. So if we look a little bit closer now, I guess there's any questions, Jack? Andrew, how's sounding?
Sounds pretty good.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so to get back, just getting back to what trade associations are trying to do here, they perform many valuable functions, both for their members and for the public, and it's hard to imagine a market economy without them. To ANSI, the government is just another interest in the balanced market that it contemplates. Albeit it is a large and influential one. The Internal Revenue Service classifies trade associations as 501c3s. It's the same category as churches, and that's why I can get rather sensitive. I'm very careful to say down here that how they trade, exchange information is not part of this presentation. Very often, internal communication can also be construed as not conforming to the competition laws. So that's another conference for a lawyer to deal with. I think there's enough here for us. These are the main functions, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of them. Ultimately, our cinematic moment is basically converging right down here. So I'll give you a hint, a little foreshadowing. Let's look at how trade associations look in one standards developer. This is the NFPA, and if you look at, this is the National Electrical Code, by the way. So these are the actual votes, and NFPA is very orthodox about identifying what interest each of these voters are they represent. So, for example, here's you have Marty Adams. He's representing NECA. NECA is actually a standards developer as well as a trade association. Not all trade associations are standards developers, of course. In fact, there's a minority of them, as you will see. But as you can see here, NEMA is one of the oldest and storied standards development organizations as well as a trade association. I think they may be the largest and the oldest. Let's go over here, and what do we have over here? We have American Chemistry Council, which tends to, I think you'll see a lot of the oil industry, the energy industry project its interests through the American Chemistry Council. So what you're seeing here is one standards development organization. They're also a trade association, being orthodox in the way they feel necessary to deliver their service to the market. And so that compares now with another organization. This is ASHRAE, ASHRAE 90.1. ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration Engineers. You can see here that that in the roster of votes that there is no affiliation cited here, neither their employer nor their affiliation. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention to our audience today. Here also this is another storied standard, so to say. This is the elevator standard, and what's noteworthy here is that you don't see trade associations called out the way you did in the NFPA and in the NEC. You're seeing largely special consultants and manufacturers and enforcement. I believe this might be an enforcement interest here. Long story short, the way ASME balances its interest categories, or at least identifies them, is different than NFPA and ASHRAE. I believe, and I don't know, I'll have to get some better information about this, but I believe they have a special committee that is, I think, intends to make sure that those votes are balanced. I guess I'd have to call ASME to see exactly what they do, but it strikes me that that's one of the criteria you have to meet to continue your ANSI accreditation. So you can see ASME doing something different there. Let's look at another one. Let's look at ICC. Now ICC, they don't have this at all. They don't have their votes. If you know much about the IBC, International Code Council, if we get a little closer, you can see there is no documentation of who the votes are, at least not in the document. Now, I believe on their website there might be a place where they say who the votes are, but long story short, the final votes are cast by building inspectors. That doesn't mean ideas can't come from the other interests through the building inspectors, but the final votes are cast by the building inspectors, and they are the ones. They're the ones who actually shape the next version of the ICC. Let's look at another one. Here is the civil engineers. This is the structural loading document. We're doing a little work on this one. This one looks a little bit like ASHRAE also. You can see their credentials here, but you don't see neither their employer nor the trade association. This organization, ASCE, doesn't feel that that's necessary, obviously. Maybe it's elsewhere, but I do have a subscription to all these documents, and I was not able to find it. It doesn't mean it's not there, but in general, the salient identification of who the voting members are is not in the front part of the document. Let's go to one more. This is the IEEE. IEEE, this is the National Electrical Safety Code, not to be confused with the National Electrical Code. And you can see here now, they do it a little bit differently also. They identify the person and the trade associate and the employer. I think the implication here is that you can only represent your employer. I'm not quite sure what to make of this. It was clear to me that there's not a lot of users, and they're over there. I know a lot of people there, and they're very delighted whenever we can participate in their process. But as you can see, that is a document that affects utility industry, what we call the technology on the supply side of the service point, and so there's not a lot of interest from users, at least in our industry, in this document at the moment, even though we have large distribution systems. We're changing that, but for the moment, so that's what that looks like. Any thoughts, Drew? Okay, let's march along.
No thoughts off the top of my head.
Okay, good. So let's get back again, and let's talk a little bit about what else. So I think I brought this up for another reason. What's the next slide telling me? Okay. All right, so I told you about all the things that the trade associations do. We'll come back to this one more time, I believe. So if you look at the organization chart of I'll say a typical large university, you're going to see that these trade associations have planted a flag on just about every position. I picked the University of Wisconsin because it was a clean chart. It was simple enough to get my point across. This would be no different than at Stanford or Michigan State or Florida or even a K-12 school. So it's interesting here. What they have here is there's a part of our industry where they're marketing the marketing of higher education. So there's at least there's a special session for the American Marketing Association just for our industry. If you come over here, it looks to me like you've got the academic department. Here's the Association of American Law Schools. There's probably an association for engine schools. There's, like I said, there's no shortage of trade associations in our industry. Let's see. What's this one? This one is the Association of Marketing. Okay, this is the Alumni Association. So this is the Association of Alumni Associations. Let's take a look at. By the way, there's associations for associations. You'll have a look at that in a moment. So let's just run very quickly through the home pages of all these different associations. I'm close to this one. My daughter's an athlete here on the U of M crew team, and she's telling me the stories about what's required. This is not facilities, although it's starting to get into their area, or at least there's things that are affecting water quality and helmets and things of that nature that ASTM does that affect us. In any case, suffice to say, there's another association that our industry has embedded within it. Housing, the housing folks have their association. The police have their association. The architects in our industry have their association. The risk management and insurance office has their association. Community colleges have their association. The planners, the real estate officials, the IT enterprises, a little bit of IT in our industry you might have heard. Safety, what is this? SHEMA, environmental, I guess the compliance office of labor and workplace safety office. This is the food services, the dorms and the hospitals. They have their trade association. We have the research administrators. They've got their trade association. The health service. The intramural sports have theirs. The college stores have theirs. APA. The cable campus television administrators have theirs. Presidents have theirs. Independent. So there's variations of this. There's a Claremont. I didn't put them in here. Claremont. Another group. There's a Washington area group. This is the professors have their association. The college unions. I guess that there's two associations just for college unions. I didn't know that. Now here's another group. They actually call themselves Council for the Advancements of Standards in Higher Education. So I guess they don't want to do standards for K-12. In any case, they're dealing largely with the academic area. Our origin is principally facilities, but many of the same processes apply to the academic departments, as we'll probably deal with. Here's another group. Everybody, all the trade associations that are in Washington, they have their own secretariat. If you think of, as I said earlier, Washington is its own interest in the government is its own interest in the ANSI standards development process, and so organizations, industries that communicate, when there's a lot of good internal communication within any industry or within any organization, generally it's fairly prosperous. So here you've got all the trade associations within Washington all get together, and they got their own website. They probably have their own meetings, and they talk about stuff. And I guess if you're in Kansas City, I'm sure they let you in, but generally it's easier for you to get to their meetings and lunches. So I guess it looks like I might have missed one of these. What I wanted to show you that there are a couple other trade associations here that are sort of off my sequence. The Simon Institute, and they deal with custodial services, and down here, this is recently formed by IEEE. I happen to be the first chairman or founding chairman along with a couple other people. So we'll be dealing with electrotechnology for education and healthcare across the entire spectrum from K-12 up to hospitals. So there you have it. That's just a look at a broad overview. And so I ask the question here, and this is for others to answer on their own. Is this our strength or our weakness? I have days when I think it's our greatest strength, and other days when it's not working so well. We'll have to do a special session on consensus, but that's not this one. Yeah, I think it is noteworthy that other organizations, other governments are interested in getting their education system organized, administered better. If you look at today's blog entry, for example, from Texas, you can see that the healthcare area is trying to get better organized. So I suppose I'm not surprised that these other countries that are promoting and have a great culture of education are seeing the need to get to manage the industry better. So that's what's happening over there. So we're getting close to the end here. What I want you to see here is that when you take all the ANSI standards that apply, just say to the facility area, and then you put them on one axis, and you put them and you put all the trade associations on another, you create what I call an idea space, this sort of marketplace, this theater of ideas, where you can discover leading practice, where you can pull together and discover all your little half percents that accumulate over time that add value to your organization and industry. So I had to take a shortcut here because it is a very large diagram. Up on here, as you'll see, I listed all of the ANSI standards developers, and it got to be so large that I couldn't take it way out here, so I put it in a different color. So just assume that the red is really is the same dimension here. And along this axis you will see all the different trade associations. So let's look a little bit closer at this. So if you get closer, you can see that some of the organizations we deal with rather closely are all affected by these. Now, these are just facility. I haven't talked about administrative and financial and management standards. These are just facility technologies, infrastructure technologies. There's a great opportunity for these organizations to engage and put ideas in front of these committees. Some of them I don't even know the acronym for. I believe this is the American Society of Sanitary Engineers. This is the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. There's a lot of land-grant institutions, and a lot of universities have very large and important agricultural programs in their schools. And coming down on the other axis, you can see, again, all these trade associations would have to deal somewhat with what's going on the what I call the x-axis. And you get down farther here, it's just another view of it. So let me go back to that. So that's what I call the idea space. And I didn't fill it all out because it's just too complicated and it moves too much. But I hope I can give some dimension to what the opportunity is. And so we come back to where we started, which is how we want to operate in this theater of ideas. We want to be a better user. We have what I'll call an emergent logo here. We're still fudging it a bit, but when we call ourselves Standards Michigan over here on our Twitter site, this is intended to indicate that we're focusing our efforts on being an active and innovative user interest, using our market footprint to put ideas to get innovation in our industry. You can see here on our Twitter site. Let's pull up my Twitter site. That's what we try to deal with every day. There we go. We just started this. We have we're following more than followers, but try to put an idea up there every day. Some development that tries to advance total cost of ownership principles. If you come over here, you go to the hashtag, you'll probably see a lot of our tweets here regarding it, and you can see the tweets of other people, other Twitter users on total cost of ownership concepts. So I think I'd like to close there. My cinematic moment is one where I'm going to ask the question. Is it possible for a trade association to be effective in the global standards space without conflicting with the incumbents? Remember, I had said that incumbent interests are ones that whose business model finances their presence. That generally is the That's the general interest in the producers. These tend to be the stronger interest groups in this marketplace, and the users the weaker ones. And so, is it possible for trade associations to be engaged in standards development processes without conflicting with the interests of its corporate sponsors? Many of our code wins have come at the cost of the revenue stream of standards incumbents that support the trade association. So how can trade associations simultaneously deliver value to its members and still keep it worthwhile to have the sponsorship of the incumbents? Because we need the incumbents. We need their innovation. Without innovation, we're going nowhere. So that's the story for this week. Any thoughts? Any reflections? I think we stayed mostly on the teleprompter.
There are a lot of associations out there.
I didn't want to reflect a lot. I wanted people to see how much there is there. I remember showing this to my colleagues at ANSI, and they were floored by it. And I think I'm hoping you get a point of view here that you haven't seen before. I always like this to be more like a Prime Minister's questions, but we do schedule these. We do schedule these on a Friday afternoon for a very good reason. We don't want to crowd out. We don't want to crowd out. Our main job is to do this right here. This is what we do. We write code and we get votes. And first of all, we write code, travel to the meetings, try to get the votes, make people believe it. Getting it driven into our culture, that might be something different, but that's a different teleconference. So as you'll notice here, I have left some gaps for you to draw your own conclusions. I'm happy to talk privately to anybody about what we do here, about the specific topics. So I think next week, unless I hear otherwise, we're going to talk about the Geneva organizations, because people need to understand why it's important for our industry to at least be following, just as governments take inspiration from each other, and you'll see a lot of governments take ideas from other governments and try to put them through the ANSI process. And so I think that might be a good topic. If anybody has anything else, better. Otherwise, I think we're going to talk about the Geneva. That would be the ISO, IEC, and the ITU. Okay? Thanks very much for your time, gentlemen. We'll see you on the Worldwide Inner Tubes.